Another review here. For those of you, this section of video is totally optional, but some of this section can get a little confusing with the idea of return, and also the instructions really are causing you to go back and forth between your understanding of what the code is saying. So there's a certain level of literacy, in other words, that these exercises are assuming you've acquired in order to kind of get what, or puzzle out what the instructions are actually leading you to do. So I just thought I'd go through it with you. So video is here if you need it, and if not, you certainly don't have to listen to it. But okay, so these next three exercises we'll just go through together. And first of all, we're going to start with that principle that I've already said a couple of times, which is really important in computation, and that's DRY, D-R-Y, don't repeat yourself. And basically, this is just saying what we said before, that anytime you find yourself repeating yourself, you could probably make a function out of that activity that you keep doing over and over again, and that could save you time. All you have to do is be explicit about the steps involved in that activity and understand what your parameters are. So here we have the idea of a little function that you might want to declare for yourself. So that function asks, or that need would be that every day you keep buying 5 oranges, but the prices keep changing, and you just wish there were a way to figure out what that price times 5 actually is. So you want to declare a function that calculates that cost for you. And so then every day you just go to the store, you put in what the cost of the orange is, and boom, you know how much money you're going to spend. So that sounds pretty easy, and it is pretty easy. So we start out by declaring a function, and and you should remember pretty easily how to do that. So you start out by saying variable, and it tells you that the function you want to declare is one that is called orange cost. So we're going to call a variable, and we're going to say, or use the keyword var, and so we're going to say var orange cost. And we're going to say that that is a function, and it's a function of a parameter. And so then the question is, what should that parameter be? And so we're just going to call it cost. So orange cost is a function of some other number called cost, right? And so all of this then needs a block of code that we're going to be repeating. So if we look at our instructions, we want to calculate the cost of all 5 oranges together. And it should take that, so basically it should take the cost of an orange and multiply it by 5. So that's pretty easy. So basically what we want to do inside this block of code is take the variable that we pass in, which is going to be called cost, and we want to multiply that by 5. And then we want it to log, though if we look at the next instruction there, we want it to log, console log, the price or the result of that multiplication. So we're going to add one little step here, and you might remember this from the last one we did. So we're going to call another variable within this function, and this variable will only act inside this function. So if we call it outside the function, it actually won't have any meaning. It's the difference between a local, it's called a local variable, and a global variable. So we're going to call a variable here called value, let's say, and we're going to say value is equal to cost, which is that number that we pass into the function, times 5. Then we want the computer to console.log what? Cost. Oh, sorry, not cost. We want it to console log that value for us. So orange cost is going to do a couple things for us. We're going to take orange cost, we're going to pass in how much one orange costs, it's going to multiply that by 5, and then it's going to tell us what that result is. Right? Perfect. So that's everything we want to do. We need a colon at the end of that. Semicolon, sorry. And now it says call the function and pass in the value $5. So orange cost, whoops. A-N-G-E, cost 5. And then remember that, and save and submit code. 25. That's exactly what you would have thought, and it printed it out for us. That's just perfect. So we'll go on and start the next lesson. Okay, so now that we've figured out basically how to write a function, sometimes we don't just want it to print, so we don't just want to console log a variable. Sometimes we just want that variable back out so that we can use it. And we call that a return. So return is another keyword, just like variable is a keyword, or function. Those are all keywords. They're basically commands that the computer is giving, or we're giving to the computer. And so return is another keyword we can use. And it basically, as I said, just gives the value back of what you've been doing. So in the example, we have under the instructions here, we have a function called times2 that takes a number and returns the number times 2. So you can see here, here's that function. We call var. It's called times2. It's a function of a number. And the purpose of this function is to return whatever that number that you pass in times 2, right? So this is just like our last function, only instead of multiplying by 5, we're multiplying by 2. And instead of saying console log, we're telling it to return. It saves the step of having to declare that other variable, right, in order to return. So returning is sort of the same as kind of declaring a variable that's called val that is equal to the result, right? So it sort of saves you that line of code. So on line 7, after the equal sign, it says call the function times2 with any parameter you want. So here, we're declaring another variable, we're calling it the new number, and now we're going to print that new number. So remember, before we caused it to print it, we had to declare a new variable called value in order for it to print that new value. Here we're doing the exact same step, only we're doing this now outside the function. We're declaring a variable. That variable is called new number, but now we're going to call our times2 function. Times2, and we're going to pass it any number we want. So what number should we use? How about 77? Times2, 77, and console log that new number. So what do you think this is going to do for us? Any thoughts? Okay, you've got your ideas. Did you expect it to times 2 and print it out for you? Good, so you've got that one. Okay, now we're going forward. We've sort of got the idea of function, we've got the idea of return, and now we're going to incorporate the if-else. So we're bringing it all together here. So when we call a function, its return value is just the result of running that function. And then we can use that just as we would any other value in JavaScript. So it's a new way of getting data, basically. Now this project gets a little bit trickier because, again, we have to kind of reverse logic what is being asked for here. So let's look at the statement on line 7. What does it say? So it says if some function called quarter passed, so you pass into the function called quarter a number. Now if it's saying if the modulo of doing that number divided by 3, so if the remainder is 0, then we're going to say the statement is true, else we're going to say the statement is false. So you have to understand what's being asked for here, right? So what's being asked for here is that a number is divisible by 3. The question is, what is this quarter function, right? So the very first thing is that we have a set of instructions that asks us to define a function called quarter, which has a parameter called number. So that's easy enough. We start out with var, and it's called quarter, and that equals a function, and its parameter is a number, right? So that's everything we've had there. Now we need our code block. So this is our block of reusable code. So we want this to return a value, so return equal to 1/4 of the parameter. So return number, spell number correctly, return number divided by 4, right? So that's return 1/4 of 4. Easy enough. So when we pass a number into quarter, it's going to divide that number by 4. Now we're supposed to call the function in the if statement and put in a parameter value such that statement is true is printed on the console. So we're looking for a special number here. We're looking for a number that is both divisible by 4 and then divisible by 3. If it's not evenly divisible by 4, you're going to get some number with an integer after it, right? And then if you then divide that by 3, there would be rare circumstances where that whole thing would actually be divisible by 3, but those are going to be very, very rare. Better that your number is cleanly divisible by 4 and then cleanly divisible by 3. So somebody think of what that number might be. There are lots of them, but you might think of the smallest one, or you might think of maybe this one because they suggest it to us. So we are going to pass that number in here, and if this number is basically both divisible by 4 and divisible by 3 so that you get a modulo of 0, our program should print the statement is true. And if we're wrong, the program should print the statement is false. So that one required basically some reverse logic. That's what was tricky about that. And there we got the statement is true, so good for us. Okay, so that ends the functions return and if. That was sort of a blitz through that all, and it is a little bit confusing the way the lessons run, so that's why this extra little video was made available for you. I hope that helps.